As a girl she had to pass frosty messages between her parents. How Meghan Markle's family life was scarred by racism, bankruptcy and bitter feuding as the future princess's unseen photo album is revealed. As the wedding guests file into St. George's Chapel, Windsor, on 19th of May, with the bride's contingent to the left of the aisle, the groom's to the right, as tradition decrees, the contrasting scene will tell its own poignant story. On Prince Harry's side of the magnificent Gothic chapel, the pews will be packed with members of the extended royal family, from the Queen and Prince Philip, and Charles and Camilla, to his most distant cousins, plus scores of minor ristos, friends and dignitaries. Across the divide, however, things will look very different. Apart from Meghan's reclusive father, Thomas, 73, who is expected to make a rare excursion from his modest beachfront home in Mexico to give her away, and her mother, Doria, 61, who will have flown in from Los Angeles, only a carefully selected handful of Meghan's relatives will be there to witness this momentous event. Notable absentees will include her half-siblings, Samantha Grant and Tom Markle Jr., who have caused Meghan such embarrassment since her romance with Harry became public. Samantha with her cutting remarks about members of her family, Tom Jr. with his drunken misbehavior, including being arrested last year after allegedly putting a gun to his girlfriend's head. She has now reportedly washed her hands of them, telling palace lawyers, "I don't know these people." Damning words, if true. And ruthless, too, we might think, for a woman who has risen from humble beginnings and made it her mission to champion the cause of those less fortunate than herself. It might also be said that the royal family is not without blemishes. Yet there is no denying that Meghan's kinsfolk are a decidedly quirky crew and that, while some of her relations are admirable and engaging characters, others are such loose cannons that they threaten to become an encumbrance to her. Hers is a family where falling into debt is so commonplace that filing for bankruptcy has become almost endemic. This fate has befallen her mother, father and half-brother. Where people badmouth their own flesh and blood so routinely that it's impossible to know who to believe. Where feuds are so long-standing that even those involved can sometimes barely recall how they began. The fractures in her clan run deeper than the San Andreas Fault. That she has soared into the ranks of royalty from such an unpromising background is little short of astounding. The improbability of her ascent is amusingly summed up by Ava Burrows, the second wife of Meghan's late maternal grandfather, and one of her most level-headed relatives. Compared to other people's families, perhaps it is quite complicated, the retired teacher tells me, acknowledging her euphemism with a chuckle. "I guess it's like your Downton Abbey, and we are the folks downstairs." I'm kind of expecting a visit from the men in black suits, by which she means either the FBI, or Buckingham Palace officials, to check us out. She pauses for a moment. Then, slapping her knee, she laughs again and exclaims, "Meggie marrying a prince? Who'd have thunk?" Who indeed? Certainly Meghan's American forebears could never have envisaged that they would become part of the British royal lineage. Many of her ancestors were slaves who toiled in the deep South cotton and tobacco plantations and suffered decades of brutality and discrimination. She has written movingly about her great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was emancipated after Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery in 1865, whereupon he was entitled to choose a new name, and called himself Wisdom. Genealogists have also traced her great-great-great-grandmother Mattie Turnipseed, a name probably derived from her unforced line of work and conferred by her white masters, in Georgia. In 1885, Mattie gave birth to a mixed-race daughter, Claudie Ritchie, who fled to the marginally more enlightened state of Tennessee in search of a better life, and worked in a department store. Claudie's husband, Jeremiah Ragland, was also determined to move up, and started a tailoring business. In later generations, the family's quest for advancement gathered pace. Though they attended a segregated school with scant resources, two of Claudie and Jeremiah's 5 children, Dora and Lily, won college places. Dora became a teacher. Lily earned such renown as an estate agency director that she was listed in the book Who's Who among African Americans. Their brother, Steve Ragland, ironed clothes in a cleaner shop, and married the daughter of a hotel porter. In 1930, the couple moved to Los Angeles, where their son, Alvin, Meghan's grandfather, was born. In many ways, this is where Meghan's story begins. Alvin was a mercurial, larger-than-life character, and some family members say it is from him that Ms. Markle takes her outgoing personality and penchant for performing. Alvine was an antique stealer, an interest that has passed down through her mother to Meghan, whose fortunes fluctuated. He also collected vintage cars. His first wife, Meghan's much-loved grandmother Jeanette, was the daughter of a hotel bellhop and a lift operator. In later life Jeanette suffered a stroke, and Meghan, by then in her teens, helped nurse her. She would sit there, talk to her, hold her hand, cook for her, and take care of her. Whatever she could do to bring comfort. She loved her grandmother, says Jeanette's son Joseph Johnson. Meghan's paternal ancestry is no less complex and fascinating. Her father's descendants were mainly Dutch, Irish and Scottish immigrants who settled in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania. Going back 15 generations, however, genealogists claim to have established that one of Meghan's forebears, Christopher Hussey, who sailed to the New World in 1632 and helped found Nantucket, was also related to the Queen Mother, meaning, incredibly, that she and Harry might possibly be very distant cousins. More recent prominent figures include her paternal great-grandfather, Papa Ike Markle, who, I am told, stood 7 feet 2 in tall and possessed gargantuan strength, which would explain the bear-like physiques of Meghan's father and half-brother. The son of this colossus, Meghan's grandfather Gordon, worked on the railroads, while her grandmother Doris sold cheap clothes and household goods in a 5-and-dime discount store, and baked whippy pies laden with chocolate and cream. They were typical small-town, God-fearing, blue-collar Americans. But like his older brothers, Mick, now 78, who held senior public service posts and is now comfortably retired in Florida, and Fred, 76, who has set up an independent ministry of the Eastern Orthodox Church in Florida, the ambitions of Meghan's father lay beyond the Pennsylvanian backwoods. At school, he enjoyed helping backstage with theatrical productions and despite being colorblind became adept in the use of scenery and lighting. So, after taking a job setting up the pins at a bowling alley to save money, he headed for Chicago, where, concealing his visual impediment, he found jobs in theaters, and later on TV shows. This was in the mid-60s, a vibrant time in the Windy City, and at a party he fell for a stunning, red-headed hippie named Rosalind. Though she was fresh out of high school, and he was barely 20, they quickly married and had 2 children, Samantha, now 53, and Tom Jr., 51. Within 8 years, however, he and Rosalind were divorced. She declines to explain why they split up, telling me they were both at fault. But a source close to her says Thomas was an absent dad and, at that young stage of his life, he was not a family person. Rosalind started a new life with the children, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she still lives. With his professional reputation burgeoning, and Hollywood in his sights, Thomas moved to Los Angeles. It was there, when he was in his mid-30s, that a pretty young woman again turned his head. Her name was Doria Ragland. She was around 10 years his junior, and she was temping in the studios where he worked. This was in the 70s, the dawn of a supposedly more enlightened era. Yet in his insular hometown, his relationship with an African-American woman might well have invoked mutterings of disapproval and hostile stares. Even then, in some black neighborhoods of Los Angeles, there would have been similar misgivings. Thomas and Doria were in love, however, and these resolute characters were not about to let bigotry come between them. I like to think he was drawn to her sweet eyes and her afro, Meghan has said. Plus, their shared love of antiques. Whatever it was, they were married, in 1979, in Thomas's home state of Pennsylvania, and had me. Rachel Meghan Markle was born in Los Angeles on 4th of August, 1981. 6,000 miles away, in London, the family she was destined to join were celebrating the Queen Mother's 81st birthday. The toast to mark Meghan's arrival might have been less formal, but it was certainly no less joyful. Before Doria brought the baby girl home from hospital, Thomas had made sure her bedroom was brightly decorated, and hung little angels and fairies in the bathroom. Tom Jr., who was then 14, and had come to live with them, along with his 16-year-old sister, Samantha, told me his father was so thrilled with his new baby that he would dance around with her wrapped in his beefy arms, and hold her up to the mirror so she could see him cuddling her. When Meg was born, Dad was a changed man. he said. She was his whole world. The look on his face was priceless. Dad would take so many pictures of Meggie. She must have been the most photographed baby in the San Fernando Valley. He must have about 50,000 pictures stashed away. She was a really cute kid, too. You couldn't get a cuter baby. There was a lot of my father in her looks. You could see it around the eyes. And she has the turned-up Markle nose. Doria has a really nice complexion, and I think she gave Meg that $1,000,000 skin. So she resembled them both, and it made a great-looking combination. Much has been written about Meghan's childhood, not all of it accurate. Some reports have suggested she was raised in a gang-dominated ghetto, for example, but this is untrue. The reality is that for the first 6 years of her life, when her parents were together, her home environment was affluent. As I discovered for myself when I visited her former homes last summer, the family lived in an elegant, detached, Shaker-style chalet, with 4 bedrooms and a garden, in the serene Los Angeles commuter town of Woodland Hills. The neighborhood was sufficiently desirable that Bing Crosby's son, Philip, lived just up the road. The reason the family had been comfortable when they were all living together is that Thomas was earning top dollar as a lighting director on the popular TV series General Hospital, for which he won an Emmy Award. In 1984, when Meghan was 3 years old, his expertise also earned him a senior role in TV coverage of the Olympic Games in Los Angeles.